Every major story needs change. And in every story, a person has to decide who they're going to become. One of the most notable stories that has not only impacted me but several other people is Vinland Saga. It's a manga, and the main character, Thorfinn, does not get that moment all at once. Thorfinn's change happens slowly and even tragically and painfully through years of trying to give in to this revenge, and then he never achieves it. So what is he left with? He finds his real story. If you've watched Vinland Saga or even have read the manga, you know Thorfinn's first arc, which might be one of the coolest, but also one of the most worst characteristics of Thorfinn. He is a warrior obsessed with killing, and for one true purpose, killing Askeladd, who was the man who murdered his father Thors. For years, that had been his entire goal, that had become his identity, his purpose, and he idolized that. But suddenly something changed. And I want to talk about how, from my perspective, Thorfinn's journey mirrors something unusual. What happens when you stop living for yourself and surrender to something greater? And that's what I felt with how Thorfinn's character almost reflects the journey of someone who finds God. You know, we're lost in this other world, and then we shift our perspective or we shift our development, and then we find something else. Thorfinn starts as someone entirely consumed by this goal, this idea that he gets from the murder of his father. His vengeance. His father is killed, and from that moment, he swears that he'll get revenge. He doesn't truly live, he just exists to get that revenge, to get his get back, right? The interesting part, he's not wrong to feel that way, because he genuinely has grief, and it's unfair that his father died, especially right in front of his eyes. But somewhere along all that stuff, his need for justice transforms into something else. It becomes obsession. It becomes his only reason for waking up and killing other people, to show that he's strong enough to kill this man who killed his dad, to prove that he matters only to kill that dude. And I feel like the reflection from season 2 to season 1 is the exact same, because Thorfinn becomes a slave at the end of season 1, and in season 2 it's that whole arc of him changing, right? And I can see that with his journey and him being in the same boat as his father's killer. He's a slave to the idea of vengeance and revenge, and the only reason that he lives on that boat is because he wants to kill Askeladd. Before Thorfinn ever meets his true ideology of loving everyone and having no enemies, right, in this story's context, before he's ever broken, he's already enslaved. He's not free. He's a prisoner of his own hatred and his own obsession for revenge. He's the best warrior in his father's killer's army, but he's empty inside. He's powerful, but he's just hollow in the inside. The show doesn't really show this, but you can kind of infer it in his eyes, in the way that he moves with no real joy, only hunger. He like his eyes in the show in season 1, it's just like empty. he doesn't really have any emotions other than anger when Askeladd truly gets to him. He's living for himself, but himself isn't enough. It isn't enough. He has no real purpose in his life. And then, right when Thorfinn seems that he'll finally get his dream of killing Askeladd decides to go ahead and die. Thorfinn gets what he wanted, which is his father's killer's death. But he doesn't kill him. He doesn't get the opportunity to take revenge. He doesn't get to finally kill the man who took everything from him. So what happens? Thorfinn drowns himself. Not literally, but metaphorically. He finds no satisfaction. He finds no closure. He finds no feeling. He finds no sense of his life or his purpose. It just leaves. He has none of that. He spent years of his life worshiping his vengeance and his revenge. And he never truly gets it. He never truly obtains what he wanted to do all his life, right? And that's basically all his life. He was like 4 or 5, I believe, when he was taken. And at the end of season 1, I believe he was probably around 16. I'm not too positive, but yeah, most of his life spent on this whole idea of vengeance, but he never got it. And he's left just empty. Thorfinn is now lost. He doesn't know what he's living for, and he doesn't know who he is without his hatred or without his goal of revenge, right? And he basically reaches rock bottom. But then it almost becomes a moment of realization when you finally understand that his way of life isn't working and was never working, because this obsession ruined his life for what he should do next. That the only way he would get satisfaction and closure for his father's death is by killing Askeladd, but in the end, he didn't reach that. And now he's broken and he can't fix himself. So he's just lost. But Thorfinn is about to learn something. This isn't the end of his story. He learns what happens when you become broken, you have no purpose for living, and what happens after that, and his transformation and surrendering from his vengeance, from his revenge, being obsessed with his anger, being this hateful person, and to just let it go. And we see this when Thorfinn gets sold into slavery, and he goes from a warrior on one of the most powerful Vikings to now working in fields and treated as nothing. His whole story is just his past. This is probably one of the worst scenarios for him, but it might secretly be one of the best, something that he actually needed if he was to transform himself. And I know that in Vinland Saga Season 2, many people critiqued the second season for, I guess, its lack of action. But for me, I really enjoyed it because we see a lot of development with Thorfinn and his character and his transformation, how he changes. Because he basically lost everything. He lost his will to pursue anything more. He lost his purpose in his life. And in that same instance, he lost his status and his power. And he's just lost. But then he, in turn, became free and has this opportunity to become something new. Thorfinn can't fight his way out of slavery. He can't win or manipulate or prove himself because he's a slave. He has to just work. He has to exist. And he has to suffer. And through suffering, he changes. He stops seeing his life as empty. He stops seeing it as something to conquer and starts seeing it as something to receive. He receives kindness from Einar, which is one of his friends who was a slave just like him. And through that, he receives a whole world of meaning that he's been missing while he was busy fighting for his own goals and his own purpose. And this relates to Christianity in a way, because spiritually there's something really profound there. Thorfinn is chained to his ideals and his goals, but he is freed from it. At the same moment that he is enslaved, he is freed from his vengeance, from his revenge, from his only purpose that ever existed to him. His slavery physically, spiritually teaches him freedom. His powerlessness teaches him what real strength looks like. Not in battle, but in becoming a better person. Thorfinn is determined to seek peace and new grace and serenity over bloodlust and victory in battles. Forgiveness instead of retribution. And there's an interesting part where Thorfinn doesn't just become a good person. He becomes someone with an actual purpose in his life. And not a purpose fueled by hatred and rage and wants for vengeance and revenge, but another purpose that he created for himself. To pursue peace, to love and help others, to have no enemies, to live for something bigger than his past and his scars from the several battles that he's faced in his life. By the end of Vinland Saga, Thorfinn isn't the greatest warrior. He probably won't be who he was back then. He's rejected his old identity, and he's pursuing a new one, a better one, trying to help others, trying to find meaning not in battles, but in his life. He's gone from how can I kill, destroy this being to how can I help this person? How can I help these people? And it doesn't happen through gaining something, as I've mentioned. He doesn't gain the satisfaction of revenge or vengeance and then decide to live a better life. He never gains that. He doesn't gain anything in his life. It happens through losing his only purpose way back when. His pride and his purpose and his power. All of it had to go away for him to open another door to a real, genuine, better purpose. And there's something in Christian theology which, honestly, I've made so many of these videos about Christianity, right? But if you don't believe, that's totally up to you, and I'm not trying to force it. I'm just trying to express my own ideas. I'm just trying to tell you how I feel, how I can interpret something, how a little bit of, like, I guess, storytelling can, I guess, impact how I view something, especially in context of the Bible and stuff like that. But again, it's our own personal opinions. We all can believe in something or something greater. And I just wanted to show you this idea. Just hear me out. The idea that you can't actually become who you're supposed to be until you stop trying to be who you think you need to be. Thorfinn had to die as a warrior. He had to kill his old self to be born as this better person. He had to surrender his need to control his own fates through violence to discover the true meaning of life. And now, Thorfinn is more alive than ever. He has a family, he's happy, he has everything that he's ever needed, and he didn't achieve that through violence. When he was the greatest warrior, maybe not the strongest, but the most notable and renowned, able to take down Thorkel, as a little kid, he was still incomplete. Now in his humility, he's whole. In his transformation, he's become a whole nother person. So you might be asking, why does Thorfinn's story matter? What purpose does it have? Why am I even talking about it? Because his journey, though it may be a fictional tale, it's a reflection of some of our lives. Something that really happens in our lives. The moment when you realize that your way isn't working, the moment when you realize that your past isn't working and it's haunting you, right? When you have to let go of control, when you stop worshiping yourself and your own ideals and your own philosophies or whatever, and start worshiping something larger than yourself. Stop worshiping these, almost obsessive goals. Some people find that in faith, right? Some people find that through crisis, and some people find it slowly over years. It takes time. But the pattern is always the same. The first is the realization that you're lost and empty, and you can't fix it, and you can't do anything about it. And then you decide to surrender yourself and make a decision to stop fighting and start listening, or start trying to change. And this can be done in many ways, not just religiously, but also in many other different ways. Say you're struggling mentally, you have mental health struggles. So you go to a therapist, you realize that you can't do this by yourself, so you need to go to someone. And when you can do this with many other things, you have to realize that many of our problems can't be solved by ourselves. And if anything, sometimes we bring ourselves down, and sometimes we let ourselves fall into these weird thoughts or obsessive thoughts and stuff, and we have to realize, even when we're like struggling with addictions and stuff like that, drug addictions, drug abuse and stuff like that, we have to realize that we need other people to help us become better people, right? We need people to support us rather than hurt us. And then finally we build this new life. Not built on your own, but through other people. Through strength that you've been given through other people. Thorfinn doesn't have all the answers, but he's found peace. He's found purpose. And it doesn't come from winning battles and violence or taking, right, in another real world instance, by taking more drugs to find a better place for you. No, but by stopping, by choosing something better than that. By being a better person. By not harming yourself. And choosing to find peace. And I feel like I can go more in depth with so much more of Thorfinn's character, or maybe even the ideologies and maybe even Canute's own transformation as well, because it's almost like a polar opposite of Thorfinn. But it shows us the transformation of this character from broken to finding real purpose without, being a very religious context, a story, right? It's not really that religious, but you can almost see reflections or mirrors of religion tied into the story. Because Thorfinn doesn't have a moment where he thanks God or it says that he's a Christian, right? But he just slowly over time becomes a better person by accepting help from others and forgiving himself by letting go of the need to control everything, by letting go of his obsession and stuff like that. And maybe that's the real invitation in his story. Not to abandon your past, but to stop letting your past control you. Knowing that you can't become a perfect person, because all the deaths and all his kills, right, is still gonna be there. It's not like they just don't exist anymore. But you stop letting it control you, and you become honest with yourself. This is your past, but you won't let it haunt your future. Not to achieve greatness, but rather achieve peace. If you've watched Vinland Saga or read Vinland Saga, tell me in the comment section. Please let me know. Have you even found any, I guess, connections, not even to Christianity as a religion, but other religions or other, I guess, philosophies or whatnot? And has Thorfinn's transformation impacted you in any way? Because I think it has for me. And please let me know. I think that's kind of a cool thing to listen about, right? And I really enjoy talking about topics like this, especially when I'm talking about some of my favorite stories or shows, right? I talked about Berserk maybe a week ago, if I remember correctly, and how his story kind of shows a struggler, right? And I might make another topic about that tomorrow, about how Guts is a struggler and he struggles in his world, right? Never ending peace. There is no peace with Guts. And it's also kind of opposite or mirror to Thorfinn, who's found peace in his life. Obviously, I guess these stories are also pretty different, but it's kind of crazy to think about how much inspiration a person can take from these people, not resorting to violence or not resorting to rage or anger and stuff like that, but rather accepting your past and all the evil and corruptness, but finding peace even through all that stuff, right? And that's such a cool experience and such a cool idea. I might do some more stuff with anime, because that's some of the better stuff that I like reading and watching and stuff. I could do some One Piece or something like that. But let me know if you like this type of content and videos. Let me know, or you guys like gameplay or whatever. Check out my other stuff. I really do appreciate you guys for watching, and please consider subscribing. It'll mean the world to me, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out. Bye.